you know, if your mind jumps to the worst case scenario, pause and ask yourself, okay, this is what's in front of me right now. I can see in my visual field, and it brings the imagination back under the guidance of the intellect. Because I mean, that's what we use our senses for. Okay, like, you know, I'm at my desk, I feel my desk, here's a cup here, it's empty, and it's sort of like, okay, this is the present. This is the present. And it takes you back, until into what's real. Okay, so that's how you handle the imagination. For the memory, I want you to bring one memory into prayer. So, like, not with some sort of analysis either. Don't analyze the memory, just bring it into prayer. Something like, Lord, this memory I have, and remember, it's a memory. It may not actually be reality. It's something that you can't say it's reality for sure because we can't go back into the past. It's a memory, but you can just say, Lord, my God, this memory still hurts. And I'm going to just offer it to you. I'm bringing it to you. I'm offering it up to you. I'm ridding it from myself. And I'm going to leave you take care of it. This is very powerful. It brings, like, it begins the process of healing without forcing anything. It's not my doing anymore. I'm offering it up to you, and I'm not going to give it the meaning that I have been giving it. I don't know what the actual truth is because I'm a flawed individual and my memory might be flawed. So I'm just going to let you take care of it. Let it go. Dishonesty, disrespectful, discrimination, detached, dismissive. That's it. I'm done. Relationships can be messy. Are you having trouble with your personal or professional relationship? Not to worry. As a relationship therapist and coach for over 25 years, I have a lot to share. And so will my guest experts. Let's get smarter in our business and personal lives so we can be our best selves. Now, let's get on with the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. Today, I want to spend some time on a topic that many of you have told me feels personal, familiar, and at times overwhelming. The human mind often feels quite chaotic, doesn't it? Our thoughts race, emotions move faster than we intend, right? That's when we react rather than respond to the people we often love. So often the body reacts before we understand why. And it can feel as if something has turned against us sometimes. It's sort of like, despite our best intentions, chaos runs wild. Last week, in another solo episode, I spoke about Father John Henry Hansen's reminder that prayer and psychological healing are deeply connected. This is not something new. This is work, from Thomas Aquinas, from a lot of the great Greek philosophers out there. And I think it's time that we bring it back into modernity because psychological healing, like therapy, is just not cutting it sometimes. And as I said last week, and please have a listen to that episode if you haven't already. But there I mentioned that therapy, I feel, is sort of just skimming the surface quite often. And it's up to us to go deeper. So what I referred to last week was that in order to go deeper, we have to see that God is the center, or should be the center of our lives. And if we go outside that center, that nucleus, that's when our interior life becomes very scattered. We often look great on the outside, don't we? Right? Just like our houses. I find it's a good analogy. Your house might have brand new paint job or just everything's has a new exterior, like brand new hardy board. It's looking good. It's looking good. The roof looks good. You got your shrubs in front, just perfectly trimmed. But in the inside, it's chaotic. It's everything from peaceful and ordered. So, yeah, today I want to expand more on that and explore why the mind becomes disordered in the first place. And most importantly, what we can do about it. So, I'm going to walk through a Catholic and Thomistic understanding of the human person, but I promise to keep it simple because that's what we need. It is actually very simple, which I stressed last week. It's super simple, but I mean, you know, it can get a little bit overwhelming if we spend too much on the physical philosophy of it, I guess you could say. But we don't need to. We don't need to. We don't need philosophy to recognize your own experience. You can do that on your own. What you do is that you build from the lived reality, and then the language begins to make a lot more sense. I will also share a few client stories without names or identifying details, perhaps, but I think things that you can relate to because I want you to hear how ordinary these struggles are. And my hope is that by the end of this episode, you will understand yourself more clearly and feel less discouraged. See, you have faculties that need order, and you have a soul that longs for that order, that longs for the alignment. And the happy news is that you have a God who understands how your inner world functions. So you should feel super at peace just knowing that. So let's start getting into it. So, why does the mind feel so chaotic at some times in our lives? So, like when someone comes into my office and says, I don't know why I feel so anxious, I'm waking up in the middle of the night, I can't really tell you why. It seems like my mind won't slow down. Um, I have decision fatigue. I cannot make decisions if my life depended on it. Um, all of that is them describing a loss of interior order. It's not a character flaw. So you should be happy to know that. It's not a lack of intelligence. It's not a sign that you are destined for a lifelong struggle. The mind becomes chaotic because the faculties of the soul are not working together. So you can think, there's different compartments and they're not well ordered. So Thomas Aquinas explains that these faculties like in very clear categories. He did this for us. He describes the intellect as seeing the truth. The intellect is really what we would say this is reality. Like you might be feeling this way, but your intellect, if it's functioning the way it should be able to see the actual truth. You could take the example of, well, I mean, a disagreement that you might be having with your spouse. And as usual, everyone loves to spend a lot of time in the past and say, you said this, no, you said this. And then, you know, okay, so then you bring up a text and the text shows that, okay, he was right or she was right or whatever. And that's when you take a pause and you go, whoa, I don't know where my mind was when you said that. I totally missed it. I'm sorry. So if you can do that, that shows that, your intellect is still able to see the truth. And another faculty called the will chooses the good. And the memory, another faculty, stores images from the past. Then you have the imagination that projects possibilities. And then you also have the passions, and the passions respond emotionally. And the body carries all of this through hormones, sleep, nutrition, and the physical state of the brain. So when any one of these begins to react without guidance, the others will follow. It's almost like a domino effect. It can be such a well-ordered machine if you care for all of these different compartments of yourself. But when one of the faculties is inept for whatever reason, it can cause havoc. Like just think of what dementia does to a person when their memory starts failing. The life becomes very chaotic. Think of it like just one of those faculties. That's what I mean is if it becomes compromised, all the other ones fall suit. Or think of will. You might will not to have that third, fourth, fifth drink. But if you don't have the discipline, if you don't have the will, if the flesh is that weak, then you're addicted and your whole life will suffer because of it. So, yeah, that's when overwhelm happens. So let me make this all a little bit more concrete and just share an example. Okay, so a woman I worked with earlier this year had gone through, a very stressful period at work. Like nothing catastrophic, just basically long hours, which, means probably poor sleep. And with that also comes very little time for reflection. And she begins feeling, maybe tightness in her chest, maybe a few flickering heartbeats or whatever it might be. She might also have realized that she's becoming more snappy with her family, and she assumed something was wrong with her mind. But when we slowed it down, what we realized that her body was just exhausted. It was more of a result of adrenal fatigue than anything else. And when the body is tired, the passions react quickly. And when the passions react quickly, the imagination produces very unhelpful scenarios. Maybe it's like becomes very doom forecasting, for example, because when you think of it, like when the imaginations runs ahead, the intellect loses clarity. It's just sort of like if you're always thinking or waiting for the other shoe to drop, or like I say, just sort of the glass is always half empty, you start creating a reality that's not meshing with everyone else's. Like, let's say your husband's, and he's like, what world are you living in? Like, I mean, this is not what I see in front of me. Like, what makes you think this is for certain, or this, it's the, you can no longer connect with the people around you. And very simple choices become very complicated all of a sudden. Now, you see how, I mean, I think medicine, like especially maybe psychiatry, could start classifying you or diagnosing you as mentally unstable. And maybe they want to prescribe something to you. And you trust the medical profession and you go along with it. And you might start taking an antidepressant or something like that. And I think that's super unfortunate if something like that occurs, because you're not treating the underlying root problem here. You're not mentally ill. It's it's just that you're out of rhythm, and this is really common in North America, especially because our lifestyle expects the lower faculties. And what I mean by lower faculties, I should have probably just gave you a bit of a schematic here. I have this in front of me, but you don't. Like, because when I kind of wrote it out myself, it helped me. So think of the intellect being on the top of the order. That's like I say, the truth, what actually reality is. That's your intellect. And then underneath it becomes your will, your ability to make a choice. And what flows underneath that becomes your passions. So, which means, your desires, fears, anger, attraction, pleasure, And if there's some sort of weakness in those passions, then you're going to lack discipline. So that desire might turn into something ill fatal, like something like lust for another woman or something like that, and then you're going to make bad choices. So if any of your passions are weak or lack discipline, and let's face it, all of us struggle from this, right? I mean, I said lust, which would might turn into affair, but like let's just say having that second or third piece of dessert that we know we don't need. And this is gonna air, I think, just after the American Thanksgiving. So some of you might be feeling this way right now when you're all of a sudden realizing my my pants doesn't feel quite as loose as it did, a week ago. Anyway, and that those passions then, whether they turn into a good passion or a bad passion, you're going to feel that in your body. It might be a huge sense of, love or connection, or it could be a terrible physical reaction like panting or anxiousness or yeah, sweating or something like that, right? You're either going to feel very fearful, you're going to feel very content, and your body's going to tell you that. And your hormones, like you're going to send off our hormonal cascade. I mean, we all know cortisol, stress itself can cause weight gain. You don't need that extra piece of cake to cause weight gain. So just keep that in mind, okay? That diagram. Intellect falls into will, which means you can make a choice, falls into your passions, and then sort of your body sensations. And remember, I also spoke of the other two faculties of memory and imagination. Well, those sort of play around like with the will. They feed the will often. Like if you have past images, past memories, that might cloud your ability to make the right choice, or it could be good memories that allow you to make the right choice. And then as well as, images of the future, your imagination, these can be fantasies or images that might also allow you to make a good choice or a bad choice. So you can see how the memory and the imagination plays in the will. Like I said, back to the North American lifestyle, it's full of, let's think about, constant stimulation. It's really hard to get some silence in your life. There's a lot of digital noise, and it's so strange because we might crave for peace, but whenever it's peaceful, we grab the phone because we're like, this is just too quiet. It makes us just everything seems to be it needs to be rushed all the time. We have to make our time very productive, which might mean you're going to just gobble down your lunch at your desk. And that runs into a lot of problems, right? Like in terms of proper diet. I mean, it's you have to think, we say rest and digest for a reason. Only through resting can our body properly digest our food. And we lose those beautiful rituals that we might equate with even just having, a pleasant lunch, like taking time out for yourself and actually enjoying your food, each morsel. So, yeah, there's very little silence, very little slowed down kind of design in our life. It's a schedule instead designed around work rather than what it should be designed around, which is human nature. Our bodies are very delicate, despite you thinking that you can push through anything. As Gabor Mate noted in his book, the body keeps a score. The body knows what's going on. And when you understand this, you begin to see why so many people feel internal disorder. But hey, I want to tell you, you're not failing. You're simply not living a life in an environment that supports your interior life. So we need to change that environment. Now, let me give you like a simple Catholic map of your inner world. Let's walk through each of these faculties that I spoke to you about. I'll keep it practical and grounded. Don't worry. Okay, so the body, you're okay, let's just break it apart. First of all, the body. Your soul expresses itself through the body. When your sleep is irregular, or your nutrition is poor, or your cortisol is high, the soul has to work through that state. And this is why peaceful people who lose sleep feel emotions they do not recognize. The body is not separate from the spiritual life. It affects it. And okay, so that's, that's one part of it is your body. Now let's talk about the passions. Passions are emotions. Okay? It's fear, desire, anger, sadness, pleasure. They respond automatically. They pull you toward what seems good or away from what seems threatening. That's sort of like you're either talking about desire towards something that feels good, or it might make you fearful and pull you away to what seems threatening. And, that could be having a conversation that you need to have, right? You don't feel safe emotionally, so you're going to be pulled away. That's what we're talking about here. That's a passion. The problem is that these passions, they were never meant to lead the way. They are meant to respond to what the intellect, which, if you remember, is reality. They were meant to respond to what the intellect is presenting to you. It's almost like it should be, okay, I feel like this, but let's just pause here. But what actually is reality? And then you check with what reality is, and you're going, that that feeling, that emotion is very inappropriate. I don't need to feel like that. But that tends to not be what happens. When passions lead, it's what disorder is when your passions start to lead. Reason, intellect, truth feels very dim. Okay, so we spoke about the body, we just spoke about the passions, and now we're going to speak about imagination. This is a good one. These imaginations that we have, your imagination creates images constantly of what might happen, and it fills the gaps when information is missing. Have you noticed that? And then we somehow, in all of that fantasy world of ours, we somehow believe that the gaps that we filled are actually the truth. So you got to realize when the imagination is not grounded in the truth, it amplifies fear or fantasy. Okay? And hey, I might as well just say it because it just popped in my mind. A lot of pornography works in this way. It's all imagination created from memory of you watching other porn, and you start imagining what, your sex life should be. And if you watch too much porn, reality becomes only a faint, memory. It does not coincide with what reality is. And then that gets all skewed. Okay. We got to keep grounded in what reality is. So, like I say, it can cause a lot of havoc. It can cause a lot of anxiety without any real cause. Okay. Just for time's sake here, I'm not going to spend too much on each one of these faculties, but let's move on. We just did imagination. Let's move on to memory. And feel free to listen to this, one or two or three times and make notes, and, so that you can sort of get an idea of all the different faculties of your soul and see which one seems to be running havoc, okay? And then we can work on that one. So memory is another one. Memory stores all your past experiences, but it also stores emotions tied to those experiences. This is when, we give meaning to an event, let's say, that might be overly dramatic, if I can say that. Like, let's say there's two people, both with different pasts. One person has come from a very traumatic childhood who has experienced a lot of rejection, a lot of abandonment, and therefore is very mistrusting of others. The other person comes from a very solid family, loving, got all the attention that they needed as a child, and, just well formed. Both of these people go out to on a date, let's say, and the person that they're supposed to meet shows up late. Okay, these are two different situations, two different people, but they both experience the same sort of event, that their date shows or is late 5 minutes, 10 minutes. The one who's traumatized, as soon as, a minute late, this person shows, like a minute past when they were supposed to show up, all of a sudden they're triggered, right? I'm going to get abandoned. I'm going to get dumped. It's going to be a no-show or whatever you might want to call it. And the other ones just chill, having their coffee, catching up on their email, thinking, they must have run on some traffic problem. Not a big deal, right? So they're putting meaning towards, this just sort of the concept of tardiness or lateness, completely two different meanings because they have completely two different past experiences. So yeah, I guess, getting back to what I was saying, like when memory is activated in some way in the present moment, it often feels like the past is repeating itself when it might not be. It's a completely different like situation. Each event in our life we should be treating as new, but we don't because we're living quite often through our past. And, people assume they are regressing, when they're not. They're not regressing. The memory is simply louder than the present moment. That's all it is. And you can see, like, from what I just described now, how conversing with your loved one, if people are living way too much in the past, like they'll never be able to make strides in their lives. So let's go on to the intellect, which I said is sort of like the top tier. We started at the bottom and we moved up, if you haven't noticed. Okay. So the intellect. The intellect, on the other hand, like I said, always seeks truth. It wants to see what is real. But when you are too tired or stressed or emotionally overwhelmed, the intellect struggles to evaluate things the way they should be accurately. And this is the fog or the confusion that many people experience. Now, I'm going to touch on will because you can see how will sort of like it's like in between, it's kind of meshed up between the intellect being on top, the memory and the imagination being on either side of it, the passions, the desires below, the emotions below the will. The will chooses, it acts. It's sort of the action figure here, in the faculties that I'm speaking of. And when a person says, I know what I should do, but I can't make myself do it, they're describing a tired will. Very tired. I'm very tired. I just gonna have this drink. I know I should read, that report to prepare for my meeting tomorrow, but I'm just tired and I just had a fight with my wife and I just want to escape. I just need this one drink. But then it turns into two and three and four. So it's not necessarily a weak will, it's a tired will. So Now I want to describe to you how to identify where your disorder is coming from. Like I said, which faculty seems to be in the most strain or mostly strained. You could say the one that's taxed the most. Is it my memory? Is my ability to choose to do the right thing? Am I so weak in my flesh, to be able to make the right choice? Now, people will often ask me, where do I begin? As I present this to them in a session, for example, they they say, is it my thoughts? Is it my emotions? Is it my health that's doing this to me? My past? Like, what is it about me? And let's be honest. Like when I say my past, like we all go through some sort of trauma in our lives. We don't all we all have less than perfect childhoods. Like it would be impossible not to be scarred in some way, because that would mean we're in like living in some sort of heaven on earth, and we're not. So I just tell them, the best place to start is by identifying which faculty is making the most noise. And here would be like maybe some guiding questions I might ask them. I might say, is your body tired? Do you notice that your sleep is being affected? Do you have an appetite? Not enough appetite? Too much appetite? Do you feel a lot of tension in your body? Are you constantly in need of massage? How's your energy from day to day? And then, so that might kind of, you know, talk about the physical body, like what you're feeling physically. But then, I might say, how about your emotions? Are your emotions intense? Are you always going from 0 to 100 in a matter of seconds? Is it really hard for you to regulate your emotions? Do you notice a lot of fear? Are you experiencing a lot of fear or just irritability or just sadness? Or is your imagination running ahead of you all the time? Are you always living in the future, trying to protect yourself, right? Trying to make sure nothing happens, being overly controlling. I see this with women a lot. They're trying so much to predict their future by over controlling it. And notice if, like, even as I say this, notice if you picture scenarios right now for yourself that feel overwhelming to you. Is your memory replaying something unresolved? Something that has happened in the past that you just cannot forgive and forget and move ahead? Is that where the problem lies? Do you have grudges against people from the past that you that are still unresolved? That could be what's keeping you in such a disordered state. Or how about your intellect? Is that foggy? Have you noticed that very simple tasks feel all of a sudden very confusing? Or is, like I said before, is your will just completely depleted? Notice that everything just seems heavy. All the decisions you have to make just seem heavy. Like the littlest thing about what to have for dinner to, do we move to a different province or state? Like you just can't decide anything. And, sometimes the answer seems obvious. Other times it really emerges very gradually through the course of, a few therapy sessions. So this is not a test, right? Like it's simply a way to understand yourself as a whole person. Let me give you another example. A man I worked with last year came in saying he felt disconnected. It's sort of like, am I going through a midlife crisis here? I mean, he couldn't concentrate. He felt very anxious in social settings. And his first instinct was that he had developed some sort of social anxiety, perhaps. But when we looked closely, we really discovered that he had been as simple as skipping meals, working way too late and drinking more caffeine than he normally would. All of a sudden, he's up to 4 or 5 cups a day when, a couple years ago, it was 1 to 2 cups. And his body was just overwhelmed, overstimulated, overworked. And you can't just ignore that. His imagination then, like started breaking down, you could say, and began creating worries that were just not just. And his passions responded with fear. His his intellect, tried to make sense of it, you could say, but it always defaulted to assuming there was something wrong rather than just going, let me just check in with the reality here. Okay, this is not the truth. His wife could see the truth, but he couldn't see the truth because he was in constant doubt of the truth. So once we sort of corrected the foundation, the rest just settled. The rhythm was restored. And this is quite often the same pattern for many people. They think they're fine, but they're not. They're often way, way overworked. What sort of practical advice can I give you? Like what sort of like some takeaways you can leave with? Well, I know we hear this over and over, guys, but it's so true that often, you didn't come to this point overnight. It took months or years. And that means you're not going to get out of it overnight. You're going to need to take small steps for each faculty involved. And this might be the most useful part of the episode, you could say. I hope the what you heard so far you can make sense of. But I just like I what I want to do is I want to offer one small realistic 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 action for each faculty that you practice this week. Okay, so let's start with the body. For the body, I just want you to take 3 minutes, three times a day to reset. So that might mean standing up. It might mean stretching, a good body stretch, taking 3 deep inhales, pause, inhale deeply for 3 to 4 seconds, pause for 3 to 4 seconds, and exhale for 3 or 4 seconds. Breathing is just sort of such a simple, free way of resetting the body. You're communicating with your neural network. You could say that I'm okay. I'm breathing slowly. I'm not running away from something. I'm not fighting something. I'm okay. I'm okay. And this is something we should actually practice before every bite of food we take. That's why I know people might kind of laugh at, let's say, prayer before each meal. Not laugh, but it's sort of like, oh, you do that? Your family does that? Wow. I didn't think anybody did that anymore. You must really be religious or something. It's like, no. I mean, just prayer is meditative. And prayer before eating, before a meal, respects the food that we're going to eat. It gives respect and gratitude to the cook. It just makes us all pause and slow down, like prepare the digestive system for what's about to come. It allows you to just sort of like step outside, like don't be so in your head, just pause. And so, I mean, if you're at your desk, maybe that means hopefully that you can maybe look outside the window, look at nature, say a small prayer for the lunch you're about to have or something like that. This signals the nervous system to settle down. And if the more you can tell your nervous system to settle down during the day, the more it's going to start believing you. And if the body settles, the passions will follow. Remember what I said? It's sort of like an ordered hierarchy here. And so let's go to the passions now. For the passions, I want you to name what you're feeling in the moment. Not a whole big story, but just name the feeling, just the emotion. I feel afraid right now. I feel overwhelmed. I feel pissed off. I actually feel lonely. And the simple act of naming the emotion in like it's sort of it brings the emotion into the light of reason. You don't need to fix it. You just need to acknowledge it half the time. There's no fixing necessary. And sorry if I feel like I'm moving on quickly here, but I realize this is not like a 5 session therapy session here. It's just an episode, but I just want you to get an idea. So we talked about the body, we talked about the motion or the passions. Let's talk about the imagination. The imagination. So why don't you describe what's actually happening? You know, if your mind jumps to the worst case scenario, pause and ask yourself, okay, this is what's in front of me right now. I can see in my visual field, and it brings the imagination back under the guidance of the intellect. Because I mean, that's what we use our senses for. Okay, like, you know, I'm at my desk, I feel my desk, here's a cup here, it's empty, and it's sort of like, okay, this is the present. This is the present. And it takes you back, until into what's real. Okay, so that's how you handle the imagination. For the memory, I want you to bring one memory into prayer. So, like, not with some sort of analysis either. Don't analyze the memory, just bring it into prayer. Just in the presence, like just something like, Lord, this memory I have, and remember, it's a memory. It may not actually be reality. It's something that it's you can't say it's reality for sure because we can't go back into the past. It's a memory, but you can just say, Lord, my God, this memory still hurts, and I'm going to just offer it to you. I'm bringing it to you. I'm offering it up to you. I'm ridding it from myself, and I'm going to leave you take care of it. This is very powerful. It brings, like, it begins the process of healing without forcing anything. It's sort of it's not my doing anymore. You know, I'm offering it up to you, and I'm not going to give it the meaning that I have been giving it. I don't know what the actual truth is because I'm a flawed individual and my memory might be flawed. Okay? So I'm just going to let you take care of it. Let it go. Now, for the intellect, how about just asking yourself one grounded question? A very simple question. Is this true? Not, how do I feel about it? Don't ask yourself that question because that's the emotions, remember? Ask yourself instead, is this true? Not, but what if it happens? No, just, is this true? And what this does, it aligns the intellect with reality and not with fear. Like, let's get to the truth. I'm all about finding the truth, guys. That's why I love the intellect. It's grounding. That's probably why I went into psychology, because I love seeking the truth. But now that I'm practicing psychotherapy for so many years, this is what I'm talking about now. There's still something here. It's more than just the mind, it's the soul. And these faculties sort of encompass the soul. So for the will, I want you to pick one tiny act each day. Okay? Remember, guys, this is about making a choice. It's not a massive life change, okay? Remember, we need small steps here. Not some comprehensive list, just one act. Something that you're you're having a hard time with, something that you're really having a hard time making maybe decisive actions. Well, maybe you're going to say, I'm going to answer one email a day. Rather than letting it all pile up in my inbox, I'm just going to tackle one email a day. Or I'm going to give my dog a treat and by walking the dog 5 minutes a day. I haven't been getting outside. My dog hasn't been exercised. I'm just going to commit to that for 1 week, or for 1 week, I'm going to not sit down on the couch right after dinner like I normally do. And after cleaning up the kitchen, loading the dishwasher, I'm going to immediately go to the front door and put my shoes on and go for that walk. I'm not going to tell myself how long I'm going to go. I'm just going to go for a walk. It might be 1 minute walk, but I'm telling you, after that minute, you're going to feel different and you're probably going to walk more than 1 minute. See, guys, small acts rebuild willpower, and it does that through consistency. Now, let's sort of start wrapping this up. I want to talk to you about the role of God being at the center, okay? This is what I spoke about in my last solo episode last week. We cannot discuss the interior of us, the interior healing, without talking about God. It's not because I want to be overly pious, religious, or because I'm Christian, I'm supposed to say this. It's because the soul is formed to rest in God. Our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. That line of scripture that's so powerful, which was, okay, for whatever reason, it's, my memory's fading me all of a sudden. Forget that. Trying to think who said that. It's, St. Augustine. Yeah, of Hippo. Okay. Our hearts are restless until they rest in thee. Now, when the faculties are scattered, prayer becomes such a beautiful way to return our thoughts to the center. Prayer is often meditative, it's often repetitive, and that's what just makes it feel so peaceful. And so it doesn't mean, I want you to sit in front of, I'm not saying you have to sit in the adoration chapel for an hour long, staring at the monstrance. To be, centered. I mean, sitting wherever you are, closing your eyes for 1 minute and saying some sort of repetitive prayer. Jesus, what's the one? I think it's called the Oh Jesus prayer. Oh Jesus, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Something like that. Repeat that over and over 5, 10 times, and you'll feel peace come to you. Okay? It means living with the awareness that God is present in your thoughts and your feelings. He's always with you. He's always there. You just need to invite him in. And it means asking simple questions like, where are you in this moment? I want to feel you. Help me see you. Help me feel your presence. Help me see this situation that's challenging me more clearly, or give me courage. Be with me. Help me see this more clearly. Help me discern these thoughts. Help me to choose justly. Provide me with the perseverance I need to get through this. Give me more patience, please. Give me a sense of calm. I'm not feeling settled. Show me what is true. Help me with my intellect. When God becomes the center, the faculties all begin to sort of orbit around him, and the passions settle, and the intellect becomes much clearer. Reality starts to shine again. And the will gains strength out of nowhere. And the imagination becomes more grounded. Memory softens. It's like, did that happen? Maybe it didn't happen. Instead of being so like certain, yes, that's what happened. Maybe it didn't. Okay. And with all of that, the body just feels safer. I saw this this in a client who struggled with loneliness. And she would lie awake at night, imagining scenarios that left her feeling very, very anxious. And her passions like reacted with fear, to just make it very simple. Like her intellect was really just becoming very tired because it was trying to make sense out of it, but it kept on getting stuck. And obviously, in that state, her will felt very weak. But we brought a simple prayer into practice for her to do in the evenings before she settled for the night or while in bed. And it was nothing long. It was just like one sentence, just like the Jesus prayer I said to you earlier. But her prayer was, Lord, stay with me in this hour, basically saying, be with me here through the night. And over time, her nights became calmer, not because the prayer solved everything, but because it reminded her soul, you could say, of its true center. Things became ordered. All right. Well, I think I kept you here long enough, and I hope you made it to the end. And please let me know if this has helped you at all. And yeah, feel free to listen to it more than once. And I never say this, but my goodness, if you would like, if you're watching this on YouTube and you like this or comment, I would really appreciate it. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, give me a review. I don't tend to ask for these things often, but I would love it and would very much appreciate it. And, as you reflect on today's episode, I just want to say that I want you to remember three things. Your mind is not working against you. Your faculties are responding to the demands that are being placed on them. And you are a whole person, and you need an environment that supports that. The interior life becomes ordered through small, consistent practices that allow the faculties to return to proper harmony. And if you try even one practice this week, you will begin to notice that, you'll notice which part of you needs attention. And if you feel overwhelmed, begin with the body. It's the simplest place to start. And for me, often that's going out to nature. Like right now, like I've been working all morning, and then I'm recording this episode, and it's 1:39 p.m. for me right now. And I know I'm telling you what I'm going to do after this. I'm going to not walk, but I'm going to run outside. And it's not like it's a beautiful sunny day. It's actually cloudy and it's quite cold, but I can't wait to get out. I need that. Like I need my mind to settle. So hope it wasn't too heavy. I hope it doesn't sound too complicated. I really want to thank you for spending this time with me today. And I hope this gives you some clarity, hope, and a deeper understanding of yourself. You're not meant to navigate this alone. God has never wanted that. God desires order in your interior life. And, it reminds me, I never spoke about this before, but I mean, I love the work of Teresa de Avila, Teresa de Avila. She wrote the book, The Interior Castle, right? And she also wrote another book, The Way to Perfection. I have to be honest with you. I read The Way to Perfection. I started The Interior Castle about 2 years ago, and it was too heavy for me. But I plan to start diving into it again. Her work is just unbelievable. That woman knew what she was doing. Probably not at the time, like most of us, but that's what I mean. Centuries after, that's when we find such value in people's work. But back to God, He equips you with the tools to pursue what you need. Okay? He doesn't leave you. He made you in perfect form. He gave you everything you need. And to me, prayer, quietude, contemplation, reflection will bring you there quicker than any therapy session can do. Okay? Well, I look forward to continue continuing with this journey with you, and I'll see you back here next week. Thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in to this episode. Remember that you can watch the full episode on YouTube, where I plan to hang out the most. Your feedback and suggestions for future guests are incredibly valuable to me, so please don't hesitate to post a comment. You are an integral part of this journey.